Hello, I'm Andri, and once again, I am warmly welcoming you all to my essential Islamic mysticism or Sufi philosophical lectures. Today, I am continuing on YouTube platform lectures on the ideal man and how Rumi, our great Sufi mystic and philosopher, sees the ideal man. Man is really, in Rumi's work, an epitome of creation, a microcosm in form. He is macrocosm in meaning. The perfect man is an ideal for the realization of which the whole creation strives and towards which the whole course of evolution is directed. He is the final cause of creation, and therefore, though having appeared last in point of time, he was really the first mover. Chronologically, the tree is the cause of fruit, but teleologically, the fruit is the cause of the tree. The soul of man is in its essence divine. Having somehow fallen and become veiled, it is trying to make and to achieve the self-realization. It is trying to realize itself again. Throughout the Sufi literature, as you have already read and listened on my Buy Me Coffee platform, there runs a paradox which can be simply identified and formulated in one phrase, and this phrase is that man is nothing and man is everything. And this phrase we have already encountered in Greek philosophy, in Protagoras' definition of man, who is nothing and everything at the same time. Even men like Hallaj or Bayazid or Khayyam, who were loudest in the declaration of their identity, or with the creation, or with the created, or with God, sometimes speak of themselves as the humblest of the humble, who have neither movement, nor thought, nor will. They were bearers of a double personality, sometimes the one, sometimes the other aspect, asserting itself and reappearing in surface. So to characterize the two aspects, we have the terms nafs, and also we have another term, and that is ruh, that are generally used in Sufi literature, the former to characterize the lower and the latter the higher self. It was by a slow and very steady process that these two words were crystallized into these definite connotations and backgrounds. The word nafs is used in the Quran as equivalent to a person or to a self, so to denote particular states of which sometimes qualifying words were used, which later on became part of the famous terminology of spiritual psychology, nafsi amarra, or the commanding self, driving man to do evil, and nafsi lawama, the rebuking self, and nafsi mutmina, the satisfied self. So used without any adjective whatsoever, it meant simply self. In the phrase, don't kill yourself, don't make harsh statements on yourself, etc., etc., etc. Even after its degradation, it could still be used for the highest notion. The universal soul, nafs-e-kul, a term borrowed from the Neoplatonists and from the Stoics, along with the allied conception aqal-i-kul, the universal reason. So the word ruh is used in the Quran as equivalent to spirit or the soul as such without qualifications. From the time, if you ask me, when Sufism became metaphysical, and that is very important point in the history of Sufism, nafs and also ruh were interpreted within the frame of the terms of the philosophy of being. Besides them, we meet in the Sufi terminology with qalb, which literally means heart, and sir, which means the inner hidden self. In Persian mystical poetry in particular, the word yan or jan, which literally means life, is used for life en général, as well as for the soul, as equivalent to ruh. Then again, we meet both among the strict philosophers as well as the mystics the word ruh as a common noun for all the selves that a man carries within: ruhi haywani, the animal self, and ruhi aqli, the rational self, and ruhi nabwi, the prophetic self, the last one representing the typically Islamic contribution, adding to and transcending the Greek intellectualistic psychology. So, in moral discourses, however, we meet generally only with nafs and ruh, the former representing in man the principle of evil, and the latter the divine spark, the former belonging to alami khalq, the realm of creation, and the latter emanating powerfully out of the alami amr, the realm of will. So the mutual relation of these two leads back to the fundamental problem of the origin of creation, of the process of creating, and thus consequently with the problem of the origin of evil that we have treated already in my former publications on Buy Me Coffee platform. So the Sufis believe that the lower self of man can be annihilated by the realization of truth and by moral purification, or to use Sufi terminology, mujahida leads to mushahida. So the belief, and this very belief, in the realization of the divine self of man in this very life, contingent life, transitory life, is responsible for the Sufi conception of the perfect or ideal man that has not only played an important role in their views about God and man, but has had far-reaching practical consequences. Politically, if you like, it was connected with the doctrine of the Imam, the representative vice-regent of God on earth, which was only a political embodiment of adjective of the invisible Qutb of the Sufis, the head of the spiritual hierarchy, pulling the strings of creation from behind the veil. So when man, in his innermost essence, is always divine, according to Rumi, because it is the spirit of God that is the essence of his soul, and when the realization of this divine self in this very life is possible, then it followed logically that man, having realized his ideal self, becomes the source of infinite power and of infinite knowledge. The exaltation of the prophet to a cosmic principle, as we'll know, on the one hand, and the deification of the Imam and the Mahdi on the other, go really hand in hand with the Sufi conception of the ideal or perfect man, which in later Islam found a systematic exposition in the philosophy of Jili. So, as besides God, no being is possible. So the ideal man, insofar as he lives in being, is hardly distinguishable from God. Can you believe that Rumi is saying that with this divine spark that is man's essence, and this man's essence is hardly distinguishable from God, means that man is a little God. So, like the conception of the Sage among the Stoics, the conception of the ideal man became the very center, the very focus of Sufi Weltanschauung and philosophical Sufism. So his spirit contains the higher types of the real, his body, the lawa, and this is something which we all can understand. His heart, qalb, is the throne of God, and his intellect, the pen of destiny. His soul is the preserved tablet, lawh mahfuz, and his good thoughts are the angels or angelic. His doubts are the evil spirits or the devil. So the cosmical man carries within himself the archetypes of everything existing. I am the ruling power in both the worlds, here and hereafter. In both the worlds I saw nobody whom I could fear or from whom I could hope to get any favor. I saw only myself. Both worlds, here and hereafter, from this here-ness or beyondness, represent the unfolding and the manifestation of the ideal man, because the ideal man belongs to both of the worlds. Like the eternal God, nobody was before me to whose demands I could be required to adjust myself, and similarly nothing comes after me. Such views, as you all know or heard about the ideal or perfect man, had become current coined since Halaj, great Halaj, who was brutally killed because of this sentence, I am God, and Bayazid, and Rumi's view of the perfect man is substantially the same. I highlight the same. Rumi didn't state anything different from Halaj or Bayazid. That living in God, man can know like God. Living in God, man can see like God and work like God. So the first requisite is the knowledge of one's own self, because he who knows his own self, he knows God, or rather, to be precise, he knows divine, and he thus consequently becomes a divinity. So, referring to the Quranic description of Christ, for example, as the Spirit of God, Rumi uses very much the language of Meister Eckhart, that the birth of Christ is an ever-recurring phenomena, that means perennial, perpetual, something without ending, of the birth of the higher self in man. This is not a resurrection of a physical body, is a spiritual realm that suddenly becomes more spiritual again. So this is the birth of the higher self that is all the time happening in man. An ultra-rational, divinely bestowed knowledge that springs from within the soul itself makes man see into the life of things, which means into the essences of things, and that is what is technically called ilm-i laduni, or the knowledge with me, with divine, whose source is not the senses. That is the kind of knowledge which was bestowed by God on Adam, which made the angels pay homage to him. That is what is termed seeing with the light of God and with a sight that pierces the heavens itself.